I've been as tall as David Houseman. I'd have made something out of myself. Thank you all for coming today. Missed being with you last week. Last weekend we moved Phyllis's mother into a long-term assisted living environment. Some of y'all have done that. That's a weekend's work plus. I'm not sure we're over it yet. But that's all working out very nicely. So we missed being with you last Sunday. We're glad that we have visitors, and when I think about Austin, Texas, I think about Guy Clark singing that he'd rather be in Austin, Texas than anywhere at the Chili Harbor Bar drinking Mad Dog margaritas. How about that? Well, good. I've never had a Mad Dog margarita. That doesn't sound uninviting sometimes. So we're glad you're with us today, and we're glad that we have folks that have been away that are back. And Barbara, we're delighted you're back. We've really missed you, so we're glad that you're back. We're always happy when it's you dragging Bob along, so we're glad you're back. Thought we had really great music this morning. Everybody think that? So we appreciate our music leader and our pianist and everybody being able to join in and sing like that. So that's a great thing to do. I left on this table and on that back table some copies of an article I was asked to write the first of this week. I've got 75 copies. That was all I could get my hands on. So if you'd like one, help yourself. But if you could kind of get one for family, I think that'll give people a chance to have it. So you'll see immediately what it's about. I mentioned in this article, or in this two-page piece of writing, a guy named Robert Hartman. Many of you have heard me talk about him before. He was my great teacher at Knoxville that I did my doctoral work with, and I've spent a good deal of my life kind of advancing some of his ideas. And so I didn't explain who he was because people that would normally get something like this wouldn't need the explanation, so that'll fill you in. So anyway, there's some up here and there's some back there, so you can help yourself if you're interested. I want to describe a situation that I bet everybody in here has experienced in one way or another. You move to a town or you come into a new situation and you meet someone, or maybe even you meet a family of people. They may be your new next door neighbors, or they may be people that you work with that become associates with your job. And you develop a relationship for a few years, maybe even a really, really nice relationship. The kind that really fills your life with a lot of really very nice memories about people. And then life is very, very mobile and very, very transient. And so we've all had the experience of moving away from these first places or the people that we knew, going somewhere else. And it doesn't mean that anybody is good or bad. It just means that sometimes in all the flow and movement of life, it's hard to keep up. It is hard to keep up. And sometimes keeping up means remembering someone's birthday. Sometimes keeping up means just a Christmas card during the holidays. And we certainly have the ability to get separated from people, even family that at times we've had great relationships with. And then sometimes that situation kind of doubles back on us in an interesting way. And at the most unsuspecting time and the most unsuspecting place, here suddenly is a person that you had that relationship with. Sometimes that means just passing somebody quickly, walking on the beach or at the airport. But sometimes life kind of turns its twist in a way that you're actually able to spend a little bit of time with that person that you knew a long time ago. And what do? We all all try to get caught up. And we all try to see what has intervened in this time between the last periods that we were together and today. And sometimes that can be very, very interesting to find out what has happened to people and to allow people to find out what has happened to you. And sometimes those reconnections can just be very, very scintillating in the way that they impact our lives. So everybody's had those kinds of experiences at reunions on purpose or accidentally, but they certainly can be kind of interesting at times. And so a couple of weeks ago, I was on my way back from New York, and I was on the airplane coming back, and I got to LaGuardia, and I went to the Delta room, and I'm sitting there in the Delta room, and suddenly this young man walks by that immediately I recognized him, and he recognized me. He was one of the first people, at least his family was, that Phyllis and I got to know when we moved to Chattanooga, and across the better part of 5 or 6 years, we were very, very, very close as friends and as neighbors. Our kids grew up together for a while. They played together all of the time. We were in their house and they were in our house, and so it was one of those kind of really neat relationships that if we've had them, we all feel thankful for. And so we visited there a little bit before the plane took off. And lo and behold, we ended up in seats next to each other coming to Chattanooga. And so we went to another Delta room and awaited another airplane, and we talked for another hour. And then we got on the plane coming to Chattanooga, and lo and behold, we were sitting right next to each other again. And so finally we walked our way out into the dark of the Chattanooga airport and said goodbye, and it may be another 25 years before our paths cross again. But boy, did we ever fill that time with memories and remembrances and coming to understand things that happened in that family and in ours, celebrating some wonderful events and really mourning the fact of some deaths that had even occurred. And so all of us have been in that kind of situation. I want to tell you a little bit about what that young man told me, about his family. And then I want to tell you a little bit about my response to that. And then I want to tell you a little bit more about how I kind of analyzed my response to that. First of all, I can tell you about the young man I was talking to, now in his middle 40s. He finished school here in Chattanooga and had gone to UT and had gotten a nice degree and a graduate degree from UT. Came back to Chattanooga and got a good job for a local company and began to move up like sometimes young people with a lot of motivation and enthusiasm do, and was beginning to make a name for himself and beginning to be successful. The only problem was that this company was a company that had made its mark and made its billions in photocopying. And we know what has happened to that particular industry. And so about 10 years into his employment, his company was first bought out, and then within a year, his company went bankrupt. And here this young man was at 35 years of age, suddenly and quickly unemployed and without anything to do. 10 or 12 years ago, before Volkswagen came our way, this might not have been the best place to find a job. He had 2 children that were in school, getting ready to go to college. He had a wife, he had a home, he had 2 cars, had a lot of stuff to pay for, and a lot of things that kind of fell his way. And suddenly he was out of a job. It's interesting what he did. The day that he found out he was out of a job, he walked down Amnicola Highway, near where he worked. And he began to walk in and out of buildings because he was determined that he would not go back home and tell his wife that he didn't have a job, that he would find a job before that day was over. And he walked in a building down at off Amnicola that had a big loading dock. And he said he was looking for a job and he would work hard, and he was given a job. He was given a job working on a loading dock for $7 an hour. But he came home and he told his wife, I still have the job. Now, I can tell you, knowing a lot about that kid, that that's exactly the kind of kid he is. High integrity, high motivation, never wanting to let anybody down, the kind of person that would meet every kind of expectation coming and going. And so he went to work the next morning on the loading dock, what did I say, at $7 an hour. Within 5 years, and now for the past 5 years, he has been the senior vice president in charge of sales for that company across the United States. And he goes from one end of this country, from border to border and from shore to shore, selling this company's product. And I can promise you, he's no longer making $7 an hour. In fact, he's probably one of 2 or 3 people that are already slated to rise for the executive wing of this company. He has made a really remarkable success out of his life. And so I sat there in that conversation and with all earnestness told him how proud I was of him and how I felt like that in the kind of stuff that I do out in the world, it's really unusual to find somebody that will put forth that kind of effort and not say no and keep pushing the equation of their life forward. And I'll bet you before it's all said and done, he'll run that company. Well, I wanted to know about his siblings. And first of all, he talked about his sister and talked about the 3 children that she has and what a good mother she is. And how all that she had ever wanted to be in her life was a good mother, and that she's had the opportunity to do that and is doing it really well. And then we talked about his younger brother. And that became a very, very different kind of story. It became a story of a young man who had tried a bunch of stuff and nothing had ever worked out really well. Who had lost a lot of money in some of his ill-fated trying a lot of different things that had impacted the entire family before it was over with. Talked about a young man that I was just crazy about, a good kid, who had gotten into a marriage, had some children, and had gotten out of that marriage in a divorce. Everything had been pretty much downhill since then. A young man who didn't seem to want to work, didn't seem to have much passion for work. Every time he had touched work, it didn't turn out all that well. A young man who finally now in his early 40s is living with his widowed mother, living off of his widowed mother. And the greatest problem in his life is avoiding the authorities when they come, wanting to know where his child care payments are. And his mother is covering his face on that. I really didn't have a response that I vocalized. I just simply told this young man that I was talking to how proud I was of him. We've all seen that sort of thing, haven't we? We've all had families or extended families in which somebody really gets a hold of things and makes something out of their lives, and then someone else, not raised all that differently, either can't or refuses or just doesn't do very much. I didn't say anything except praise for that old boy. But all the way home, thinking about those 2 boys, I thought badly about that second boy, to tell you the truth. I thought, how could somebody not understand that you got to work? How can somebody not go out and do something, even if it's $7 an hour working on a loading dock, and have at least the pride of saying and the dignity of saying that they're trying? How can somebody just go and live in the basement of their mother's home and sponge off of her and not even make child care payments? And so I drove all the way home not celebrating that young man who's done so much. But in my own mind, deriding and feeling pretty harshly bad about that kid who isn't doing anything of much work. When I told Phyllis about my little experience, she listened closely to me. Thank God she listens closely. And you know what my wife said to me about 1 o'clock in the morning before I finally got home and then got to sleep on what she said? She said, I understand your reaction. And she called the older boy's name. But she said, I think you might ought to reconsider your reaction to the other boy. And I said, what do you mean? And then my wife said to me, the Sunday school teacher, the guy who's actually got one of these things that says I'm a certified minister like Al Bowles and the bishop, my wife said to me, that little story you just told me sounds an awfully lot like that story of the prodigal son. And I hear how you think about that story. I just wonder how Jesus would think about this. And boy, did I ever get quiet out. I don't know if Chris ever brings you up a little bit like that or not, but boy, did I ever get quiet. Because you see, I don't have the capacity to get on the inside of anybody's life. Every conclusion that I drew was based on a little bit of external evidence that probably didn't go all that deeply at all. And I know exactly what Jesus would say. And long after my wife had gone to sleep, I was still laying there thinking about that and about my own judgmentalism. And I know exactly what Jesus would have said. He would have said,